recording right now. This presentation is being recorded to be made available on the CWCB website. And to streamline the streaming process, I ask you all to mute yourselves and turn off your video for all our public guests tonight. There will be time made available for questions at the end of our presentations. Our agenda today will start with a general overview of the Instream Flow program and go into the process of new appropriations. Then our recommenders will share their new recommendations that they're bringing to us this year, after which we'll transition to another aspect of the Instream Flow program, acquisitions. We will go through the Instream Flow acquisitions process, and then the Colorado Water Trust is going to talk about their request for water process. At the end, we will have some time available for questions via video or chat. Please feel free to put any questions you have in the chat during the presentations, and I will look them over in case we have time in between any presentations to answer those. Thank you. The CWCB is a division of the Colorado Department of Natural Resources and was created to promote the protection, conservation, and development of Colorado's water resources. The CWCB is tasked with many responsibilities, from protecting Colorado's streams and lakes to water conservation, flood mitigation, watershed protection, stream restoration, drought planning, water supply planning, and water project financing. The CWCB also works to protect the state's water appropriations in collaboration with other Western states and federal agencies. The CWCB is governed by a board of directors. Our board of directors is appointed by the governor of Colorado with one board member representing each major river basin, including the Denver City and County. Each of our current board members are here on the right. The representative for the Arkansas River Basin, Greg Felt's seat is we are still waiting for his replacement to be announced. Our ex officio members include the Division of Natural Resources Director Dan Gibbs, CWCB Director Lauren Riss, Department of Agriculture Commissioner Katie Greenberg, Division of Water Resources State Engineer Jason Ullman, and Attorney General Phil Weiser. The Instream Flow, or ISF program, was started in the 1970s over concern for dry stream reaches around the state. At this time, there was no mechanism within the Colorado's water rights system, the prior appropriation system, to keep water within a stream for environmental preservation. There were threats coming from the federal government and citizens seeking to allow for private in-stream flows. So what are in-stream flows, ISFs, and natural lake levels, or NNLs? They are water rights held for the citizens of Colorado by the CWCB. The ISF Flow program was created to provide a mechanism to protect the prior appropriation system while also creating a legal mechanism to protect flows for the natural environment. ISF water rights are exclusively held by the CWCB. They protect the minimum stream flows or lake levels to preserve the natural environment through a defined stream reach or a natural lake, with defined flow rates and timing. These water rights are administered within the state's prior appropriation system. As water rights within the prior appropriation system, in-stream flows, or ISFs, and natural lake levels, or NNLs, they must by law have these familiar features pertaining to any water right in the Colorado's prior appropriation system. They're defined by their amount of water and a time frame. They're administered within the prior appropriation system by their appropriation date. And they have a recognized beneficial use. What makes them unique is that they are non-consumptive and are for minimum flows determined to be reasonably necessary. They keep water within a stream reach or natural lake, and their beneficial use is to preserve the natural environment. The CWCB holds water rights for over 1,700 in-stream flows and natural lake levels. They're majorly located near headwater catchments on the western slopes of the state. Our in-stream flow team at the CWCB is led by our very hardworking section chief, Rob Veal. Kaylee White, our senior water resources specialist, focuses on legal protection of in-stream flows and natural lake level water rights. Colin Watson, engineer, also works on legal protection. Kim Mercada, paralegal, will be leaving us soon, hopefully for a life of leisure and retirement, and her position will hopefully be filled soon. Marielle, hydrologist, focuses on new appropriations, as does Brandy Logan, water resource specialist. Lisa Bright-Unger, water resource specialist, works on acquisitions and will be speaking to you later in this presentation. I, Laura Corona, hydrographer, focus on new appropriations. In addition, starting soon, we are excited to be assisted by 2 AmeriCorps service members throughout the summer through the River Corps, which is an AmeriCorps program. Now we will go through the new appropriations process, in other words, the process of appropriating new water rights for in-stream flows. This whole process can be broken into 7 steps. The first step is a recommending entity usually starts with goals motivating their desire to conserve a reach of stream or natural lake. Second, the recommending entity will take time to gather data and formulate the details of the recommendation for new appropriation. Third, the recommending entity will present their recommendation for a new appropriation publicly to us here at the annual In-Stream Flow workshop, as you will see a little later today. Fourth, CWCB staff will perform a water availability assessment on the recommendation. Fifth, the CWCB will reach out and work with stakeholders that may be impacted by any appropriation of the body of water. Sixth, CWCB staff will go through our board's process for presenting the data and approval by our governing board. Seventh, the CWCB will file an application and go through the process in water court. The entity can be anyone, but most often we have been working with government agencies like the Colorado Parks and Wildlife and the Bureau of Land Management, or conservation groups like High Country Conservation Advocates. Whoever the entity may be, they typically start with a conservation goal related to stream flow or the bathymetry of a natural lake. Some recent examples include native cutthroat trout, the native 3 species including bluehead sucker, flannelmouth sucker, and roundtail chub, riparian habitat as identified as rare by Colorado National Heritage Program, and boreal toads. Once a need has been identified, the entity needs to formulate their in-stream flow recommendation that they will be making to the CWCB. This includes several things, but there are two main parts. First is the identification of a natural environment that they want to preserve. This is most often the presence of a fish species, but could be any of the other water-dependent species, such as macroinvertebrates, or unique geological features or riparian communities, as mentioned in the last slide. Second, the entity will need to quantify the minimum flow in a stream for water level in a natural lake needed to preserve the identified natural environment. Determining the minimal flow or natural lake level is site-specific, depending on the stream, and requires getting out into the field to collect data on the hydrology of the water body. Staff conducts field work, which includes at least one site visit for each recommended stream or lake. We also assist recommenders in collecting field data and making flow measurements. This is one of the things most of us love about our job, and the ability to get out in the field and see the beauty of Colorado, aka the natural environment. For streams, determining the minimum flow is often done by surveying the channel and making stream flow measurements. To gather data used in modeling programs to determine the flow needs for the natural environment. The model used most frequently for in-stream flows is R2-Cross. This model, which determines the stream flow at which the following three hydrologic parameters will be maintained to protect the existing natural environment. These three hydrologic parameters are average water depth, average velocity of water moving through a channel, and a width of the channel kept wet. These values vary with the size and shape of the stream. Much more information about this model can be found at our website at the above address and in the R2-Cross field manual linked here. Once the entity has their recommendation formulated or developed, as shown here in the rectangle on the left, they will present their recommendation publicly to the CWCB at one of our in-stream flow workshops, such as the one today. We generally hold these workshops once a year between January and March. Once the CWCB has received the recommendation, staff will perform our own independent analysis to determine if there is water available in the stream system for an ISF appropriation. We call this our assessment of water available to be appropriated as a junior water right, aka with no injury to any existing water rights in the in-stream flow reach recommended. It is a data-driven approach in which we are looking for the best information we can find. We identify any available data, including stream gauge analysis, statistical models, diversion of records, or installation of our own temporary stream gauges when necessary due to lack of existing data. In addition, we talk to folks on the ground, such as the Division of Water Resources or other local partners who know the stream best. This hydrologic data helps us to determine the available amount and the timing of flows, like when runoff occurs and when summer flows start to recede to base flows. This graphic illustrates how this process shapes the in-stream flow. The red dotted line here shows the original in-stream flow recommendation as given to us by our recommenders. We then add any hydrological data, the best hydrological data available, that is actually showing water in the stream, how much water is in the stream, and this is shown in black. And this is as determined by our data-driven analysis of water available in the stream. Third, we shape the recommendation to fit the water available, as shown in blue, so that we are only appropriating water that is in the stream for the in-stream flow use. At the same time that we are doing our water availability analysis, we are also performing outreach. This includes notices sent out through our in-stream flow mailing list, meeting with community commissioners, county commissioners, sending out letters to landowners adjacent to the stream, and posting notices to local papers. Once we have completed our outreach efforts and our water availability analysis, shown here in the diagram in turquoise, surrounded by the rectangle in the middle, we then present the final recommendations to our board, which starts the board process diagrammed here in green on the right, as outlined by the new rectangle. Most often, we bring our recommendations to our board during their regular January meeting, where, if approved by the board, they will form their intent to appropriate. This is followed by public comment held at our March meeting, and then final action will be taken on any uncontested appropriations in May. If there are any contested appropriations, hearings will be held in September and final action will be taken then. Once the board takes final action to approve an appropriation, staff will submit an application for the in-stream flow water right to Water Court before the end of the calendar year. We don't always bring every recommendation presented to us at the workshop to the board the following year. Some streams require more time to gather data and/or work with stakeholders. A full list with all available details on the recommendations can be found at the link at the bottom of the slide. Recommendations that we have in Division 1 include Garber Creek, which starts at the confluence of North and South Garber Creeks and continues to the confluence of West Plum Creek. It is recommended by CPW and is in Douglas County. Platte Gulch, which starts at the headwaters and goes to the confluence with the Middle Fork South Platte. It is being recommended by CPW in Park County and is in Park County. And West Plum Creek, which starts at the headwaters and continues to the confluence with East Plum Creek, is being recommended by CPW and is in Douglas County. In Division 4, we have Pine Creek, which starts at the headwaters, continues to the confluence with Mara Point Reservoir, is being recommended by CPW and is in Gunnison County. Taylor River, which starts at the confluence of Erie Creek and continues to the confluence of Italian Creek, is being recommended by WRA and is in Gunnison County. In Division 6, we have East Marvine Creek, which starts at the headwaters, continues to the confluence of Marvin Creek, is recommended by CPW and is Rio Blanco County. Hill Creek starts at the headwaters, continues to Hill Creek Ditch number 2 and 3's Headgate, recommended by CPW in Rio Blanco County. Lost Dog Creek from the headwaters to the confluence of the North Fork River, recommended by CPW in Routt County. Mirror Creek, starting at the headwaters to the confluence of the North Fork White River, being recommended by CPW in Rio Blanco County. Pagoda Creek, from the headwaters to the confluence of the South Fork Williams Fork River, being recommended by BLM in Garfield and Rio Blanco counties. Paradise Creek, from the headwaters to the Paradise Ponds Diversion Headgate being recommended by CPW in Garfield County and Rio Blanco County. The South Fork White, from the Flat Tops Wilderness boundary to the confluence of Swede Creek, being recommended by CPW in Rio Blanco County. And the West Willow Creek and Willow Creek streams being recommended by BLM in Routt County. And finally, in Division 7, we have Mill Creek from the headwaters to the confluence of Cascade Creek, being recommended by CPW in San Juan County. Now we can transition to the new recommendations being brought to us by CPW. And I will hand over my presenting to Katie Birch with the CPW.
Thanks, Laura. Let me share my screen. Okay. How is that?
That looks good to me. Thank you, Katie.
Awesome. Thanks for the confirmation. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Katie Birch. I'm the Instream Flow Program Specialist for Colorado Parks and Wildlife, and I will give a presentation today on CPW's upcoming Instream Flow efforts for the year. So first, with a little bit of background, CPW participates in the Instream Flow and Natural Lake Level program to help fulfill our statutory charge. I won't read that, but we've also been directed through a number of strategic planning documents to conserve wildlife and habitats to ensure healthy, sustainable populations. And more specifically, the Instream Flow program is specifically called out as a mechanism to conserve water levels. Additionally, CPW recently updated our state wildlife action plan in 2025. This was submitted to the Fish and Wildlife Service and was just approved in January of this year. And the state wildlife action plan highlights species of greatest conservation need. So these are species that are imperiled across the state, whether it be fish, mammals, amphibians. We're pretty focused on the fish. There's a ton of information on CPW's website for the State Wildlife Action Plan update. And I just wanted to highlight, species of greatest conservation need. These are species that are declining across the state. And in the SWAP, they've been broken down into different tiers. Tier 1 are species that require immediate or urgent conservation intervention according to the plan. And CPW is working to establish in-stream flows as that conservation intervention for some of these species. And so we try to develop in-stream flows and natural lake levels in places where we have any of these tier 1 fish species. We've also targeted amphibian species and some mammals, but mostly it's fish and the fish that you see on this slide. So where are we working across the state? We're, like I said, focusing on SGCN species identified in the SWAP. I continue to leverage local knowledge and I'm willing to work with partners who have more on the ground expertise than I do. And we're also continuing to chip away at those in-stream flows that Laura mentioned on her past slide. So these are the ongoing in-stream flows that CPW is working on. I won't go through these because Laura already did that. Thanks, Laura. But I'll highlight a few that are particularly important for CPW for this year. The first is West Plum Creek, which is in the South Platte River Basin. This is a super important transition zone fishery. It's the last relatively unaltered transition zone stream that supports an assemblage of plains fish that are shown here. All these fish are considered tier 1 SGCN species, and we also have northern leopard frog and Preble's meadow jumping mouse. CPW is very invested in this basin, and we spearheaded a stream management plan group in 2020. There's more information on the link here, but as that work is underway, we really want to recommend not only studying the aquatic habitat needs of West Plum Creek, but also this protective water right. So we're working with CWCB staff and we'll conduct a water availability investigation. Here are some preliminary flow targets for 3 segments of West Plum Creek. I showed these at last year's workshop and they haven't changed. But we're looking at, some moderate base flow protections and then 2 to 3 CFS during the high flow period throughout West Plum Creek. And these targets will be refined based on water availability investigations conducted by CWCB staff. Next up is Mill Creek. This is a stream that's tributary to the Animas. CPW is reestablishing San Juan lineage Colorado River cutthroat trout. I brought this at the last workshop. But we continue to work on this stream. We conducted our two cross in this past summer, but some of the data was anomalous, and so we'll need to go back in 2026 to collect some additional cross sections. And we have some private landowners in the watershed who are concerned about their development plans, and so we're going to do some targeted outreach with them to accommodate their needs. Lost Dog Creek is in the Yampa Basin. This is a Colorado River cutthroat trout fishery native to the Yampa Green lineage. And this stream is one that I've presented on. I just wanted to bring it out back. It has an in-stream flow, but we're looking for a seasonal enlargement, and we are going to return to Lost Dog Creek in 2026 to collect some additional data. And I've got two new streams that I'll talk about just briefly. The first is Butcher Knife Creek. This is also in the Yampa River Basin. This is a tributary of the Yampa that flows kind of directly through the town of Steamboat. Um, it's a pretty important stream and riparian corridor being in the town of Steamboat. It's also super close to the schools, and I know a number of K through 12 students have some educational programs that run along Butcher Knife Creek. So it's near and dear to my heart, having grown up in Steamboat Springs, and it also supports a good fishery of brook trout, brown trout, and Colorado River sculpin. We've collected some R2 cross information already on Butcher Knife Creek in 2018 and 2025, and we have some preliminary flow targets. So looking at about 1.3 CFS during the winter period and about 3.2 CFS during a summer period. This will all be refined with working with the CWCB on water availability because we understand that there's a number of small diversions on Butcher Knife Creek. And then last up, moving over into the Gunnison Basin, this is the Clear Fork of the Muddy River. And this is a stream, well, a series of streams that all support Colorado River cutthroat trout, which is what's shown in this picture. So we have these tributaries, Basin Creek, Second Creek, Twin Creek, both North and South Forks, as well as Rock Creek that we would like to recommend. The Clear Fork of the Muddy already has an in-stream flow, but CPW is working to establish a metapopulation of Gunnison River Basin cutthroat trout. So this is a super important project for CPW. We've reclaimed these tributaries and shored up a fish barrier to ensure these populations don't have any competition from non-native trout, and we would like to see these in-stream flows on all of these tributaries. So in 2026, we'll collect some R2 cross data. Here's a photo of some fish sampling on Rock Creek, one of those tributaries, and we will bring that to the CWCB this fall. And I have I can take any questions, or I can stick around and answer any towards the end.
Thank you, Katie. Seeing no questions, I believe that Jay Skinner is up next. Hi, Jay. How are you doing?
Hi there. Can everybody hear me?
Yes,
My audio's coming through? Okay.
your audio is coming through.
I'm calling from a long, long way away. Hopefully I win the award for the farthest traveled for the workshop today. So I'll say aloha. I'm visiting my daughter in Hawaii, but I have a short, about a half a dozen or so slides to show you. Let me share my screen. Let's see. Okay, does my screen show up?
I do not currently see it.
How about now?
Mm-mm.
No? Seeing it here. Let's see. Let me go back to Zoom and
Should be the share button at the bottom next to the heart-shaped react button. I
this
also
one.
have it pulled up, Jay, if you would like me to.
Oh, yeah. And I'll just tell you when to change
Okay.
slides. That's fine. Okay. Sorry about that technical glitch. There's my slides. Um, yeah, so I am a consultant with Western Resource Advocates and have been actively supporting work of the Instream Flow program since I retired from CPW. Now it's almost 7 years ago now. Um, but I'm here to present one new reach as well as do a quick update on work that we presented last year on the Taylor River. So, next slide, please. All right, here's a little summary slide of what we're doing on the Taylor River. The Taylor River has a number of in-stream flow segments starting at the headwaters all the way down and through Taylor Park Reservoir down to the confluence with the East River at the town of Almont, which forms the Gunnison River, and on downstream as the Gunnison River. Um, Most of those, I would say all of those existing Taylor River in-stream flows, with the exception of two, one being the headwaters reach, the headwaters down to Eyre Creek, and then this next one downstream from Eyre Creek down to Italian Creek. Those two appropriations had a single flow amount year round. Um, uh, Headwaters reaches very typically, a single flow amount is probably appropriate for those headwaters reaches. But once we get down to where we have tributary inflow and a pretty solid hydrograph around the year, that is a situation that might lend itself to seasonal in-stream flows. So our goal was to add seasonality to this 1983 appropriation for 12 CFS year round so that it matches the rest of the Taylor River Basin portfolio held by the CWCB. So in 2024, we were out and collected 4 cross sections near the lower terminus of that reach. And in 2025, we went back in to this section and found 6 additional cross section sites to more fully describe the hydraulic geometry and variability that we see within riffles in this segment. Um, I guess one thing I would add to this discussion about the Taylor is it's relatively unique in Colorado to have a river this size that is basically 100% public land. Um, it's a heavily used corridor by the angling public, and all sorts of recreation happens up there due to the entire basin, with very few exceptions being all national forest lands. So that's kind of one of the drivers here, that we have a outstanding public resource here that we want to make sure that is fully protected. Next slide. That's the laboratory we were working in for the day, and these are pictures that were taken in this 2025 field effort that we had earlier in the fall. Next slide. The natural environment here is kind of a typical Colorado sport fishery. Supports rainbow trout, brook trout, and other small fishes in the system. But it's a heavily used recreational fishery, so I think the angling public probably focuses on these two species in general. Next slide. Okay, so our preliminary flow recommendations, based on those 10 cross sections that we collected in 2024 and 2025, um, uh, we're calling for a 7.7 CFS enlargement. So we'll maintain the existing 12 CFS in-stream flow for the winter base flow months, and then add that 7.7 to the 12. And the result would be a 19.7 in-stream flow when you add the two together. We are still looking at the water availability and looking at our first cut of that seasonality and building any stair steps up and down from the 12 up to the 19.7. But that work is very close to being done, and we'll keep staff apprised to that. And of course, we'll be putting together our formal written recommendation package later in the year for the next step of the process. Next slide. Big Blue Creek is another segment in Gunnison County that we looked at. Big Blue Creek is a fairly large watershed that flows in a northerly direction and into Morrow Point Reservoir. And the Big Blue Creek and Blue Creek Basin had a number of in-stream flows established back in the 80s. There was actually two existing gaps in the in-stream flow protection on Big Blue Creek, one kind of in the upper third and the other in the, we'll say, the lower third. It's kind of unknown why that was the case. I have my theories on that. We went up and looked at the upper section, and these are the happiest beaver I've ever seen in Gunnison County. They are pretty much going to town on the entire section of Big Blue Creek in that upstream gap. And so it's a series of beaver ponds rather than a flowing stream. So field work and quantification there was pretty difficult, if not impossible, to address. So we turned our attention to the lower place where there was that gap. The existing gap is from the Big Blue Ditch down to the confluence with Blue Creek. And we collected some R2Cross information also in 2025. And the results, I think, are on the next slide. We might have a pretty picture on the next slide. Yep, we have a pretty picture. So that's what Big Blue Creek looks like. Our study site was adjacent to Highway 50 as it goes from the bottom of Blue Summit up to or the bottom of the road from Blue Summit down, heading towards Blue Mesa Reservoir. Next slide. Uh, this stream reach has a number of fish in it, a variety of game fish there with rainbow trout, some cutthroat rainbow uh, hybrids, and brook trout, as well as speckled dace and fathead minnow. Next slide. So our preliminary flow recommendations on Big Blue Creek is summer flow of 11.4 CFS, a winter flow of 1.7 CFS. Um, and similar to what Katie talked about a little bit ago, uh, there's a wide range between those two flow levels, which makes me think that perhaps we should get out and collect a little more data on Big Blue Creek this summer to see if we can close that gap between summer and winter. That's a rather large um, upper and lower limit there. So not only are the hydrologic investigations and water availability ongoing, um, but I think we will probably get in there and collect a little more data elsewhere on the creek to see if we can address that discrepancy of flow amounts. At this point, I would say that that upstream segment that was appropriated in the 80s ended at the Big Blue Ditch. The Big Blue Ditch is a fairly sizable water right with a sizable um, uh, conveyance ditch. So there may be um, a point that is dried up by that ditch immediately downstream. But this lower section always has flow in it, and we'll be looking a little bit closer at the segment as a whole to determine what the appropriate upstream terminus might be for this new preliminary flow recommendation that we will present next year. I think that is my last slide. I think I have a closing slide at the end. Yeah. So um, there's my question slide with pictures of each one of our two reaches in this presentation.
Thank you, Jay. Uh, don't see any questions on the chat, so I think we can move right along to Lisa Bright Unger. And for anyone who needs to hop off, because I think that we're running over, or will be probably during this next presentation, just so you know, it will all be recorded and available on our website. It's currently being recorded. All right, Lisa, I see that you're
Okay,
starting to share, and I
pulling it.
see your slides.
Okay. 1 second here. Okay, I'm Lisa Bright Unger. I'm a water resources specialist with the Stream and Lake Protection section of the Colorado Water Conservation Board. There are two types of in-stream flow water rights, appropriations and acquisitions. You've just heard about the appropriations, but I'll just mention that they are where an in-stream flow is put to beneficial use as a completely new water right to preserve the natural environment to a reasonable degree. For in-stream flow acquisitions, the CWCB acquires existing decreed water rights or contractual interests in water from willing owners by purchase, donation, or a lease to preserve and or improve the natural environment to a reasonable degree. The acquired water right retains the senior water rights priority date, so the priority date is not based on the current date. Therefore, acquisitions generally have better or more senior water rights than the appropriated water rights. Another difference between the acquisitions and the appropriations is that an appropriation can be used to preserve the natural environment, while the acquisition can be used to preserve and improve the natural environment. To evaluate, process, and maintain acquisitions, the Stream and Lake Protection section has lots of partners. Here are some of the nonprofit organizations: the Colorado Water Trust, Western Resource Advocates, Rocky Mountain Biological Laboratories, and some of the government organizations include Bureau of Land Management, U.S. Forest Service, water conservation districts like the Roaring Fork Conservancy, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, City of Boulder, Pitkin County. The CWCB works with our project partners along with voluntary sellers and donators to evaluate their water rights and to assist owners with managing the acquisition process. The CWCB receives offers for acquisitions from people or organizations who wish to sell or donate their water rights, such as from farmers and ranchers, cities, counties, landowners, federal, state, and local agencies, and conservation groups. The CWCB can compensate sellers for their water rights from a couple of different CWCB funds. For example, one is the Species Conservation Fund. There are many different types of acquisitions. Each water right acquisition is unique, and the particular operating conditions are included each time in separate agreement that is developed by the applicant and the CWCB. The main types of acquisitions are permanent or long-term. Both of these types of acquisitions need water court approval to add in-stream flow as a beneficial use to the decree. A temporary acquisition goes through an administrative approval process in the Division of Water Resources and is approved or denied by the state engineer. And other types of acquisitions include augmentation of stream flow and protected mitigation releases. The newest type of acquisition available allows reservoir releases to be made into a reach of stream without an existing in-stream flow. We were already using releases from reservoirs into stream reaches with an existing in-stream flow, but now it can be done either way. In order to acquire a water right, there are statutes that need to be adhered to. The in-stream flow statutes are found under Title 37, Water and Irrigation. The main statute authorizing the permanent and long-term acquisition is 3792-102. It establishes the in-stream flow and natural lake level program and how the board implements the program. The main statute for temporary and expedited loans is 3783-105. It authorizes water rights owners to loan water to the CWCB for in-stream flow use and sets forth procedures for obtaining state engineer approval of such loans. These statutes can be found on the CWCB website on the Public Information tab. Along with the statutes, there are also regulations that need to be followed for the acquisitions. The Code of Colorado Regulations contains rules concerning the Colorado in-stream flow and natural lake level program. These rules are found under Regulation 2 CCR 408-2, and specifically for in-stream flow acquisitions, it is Rule 6. The rules can also be found on the CWCB website under the Public Information tab. The new type of acquisition that I just mentioned on an earlier slide, where an owner of a decreed storage water right may loan water to the CWCB to preserve or improve the natural environment to a reasonable degree for stream reaches in which the board does not hold a decreed in-stream flow water right, is authorized by Section 3783-105-1C CRS and ISF Rule 6K. During the acquisition review process, the CWCB gets assistance from other divisions under the Department of Natural Resources. The Colorado Parks and Wildlife provides recommendations and also reviews or develops a biological analysis for the acquisition. And the Colorado Division of Water Resources determines if the in-stream flow is administrable and also gives administrative approval for any of the temporary loans. Each acquisition is evaluated for appropriateness by the CWCB board. Some of the factors for the board to consider are the reach of stream where the acquired water will be used, historical use and return flows, effect on interstate compact issues, and all acquisitions are evaluated for the potential for material injury to existing decreed water rights. I wanted to point out a couple of details about permanent and long-term acquisitions. The water designated as in-stream flow does not have to be used 100% of the time as in-stream flow during the irrigation season. This is what we refer to as a split season. The irrigation season can be split where irrigation still occurs for part of the season, and then land lies fallow during use of the in-stream flow. Another option I wanted to point out is that the donor or seller can retain the right to use water under certain approved circumstances, like for drought provisions. And I want to mention what the board approval process is for permanent and long-term acquisitions. To get board approval, the acquisition is presented at 2 board meetings. A special hearing may be requested, and after the second board meeting, if it is approved, a water court application will be submitted, and then it will go through the water court process. Here's an example of a permanent acquisition. The City of Boulder donated to the CWCB senior water rights to maintain in-stream flows in Boulder Creek through the city. In Boulder's agreement with the CWCB, there is a provision for when there are drought conditions to allow Boulder to still use the in-stream flow water during those times. And an example of a long-term contractual acquisition is with Pitkin County. A trust agreement was executed where Pitkin County loaned senior water rights to the CWCB on Maroon Creek, a tributary to the Roaring Fork River, for 50 years. Now I'll discuss some of the details for temporary leases. No water court change is necessary, and the state engineer can approve a temporary in-stream flow use if there is no injury to other water rights. The split irrigation season can be used for temporary leases, and temporary leases can be used for direct flow or storage releases from reservoirs. The approval process for temporary leases takes 2 CWCB board meetings, may require a special hearing, and then also goes through an administrative process with the Division of Water Resources. This is how the temporary leases are structured. The in-stream flow can be used for a period of 120 days in a year. It is for 5 years of use over a 10-year period. And in that 10-year period, it can only be used for 3 consecutive years. It has a 10-year period that can be renewed 2 times, which means the lease can last up to 30 years. And last is the expedited lease. It is a 1-year term and can be applied to the 5 and 10 lease as the first year of use. And that concludes my presentation. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Lisa. I do not see any questions on the chat regarding your presentation. So I believe that Colorado Water Trust is up next. Thank you, Lisa, for your time.
Sure.
All right. Oh, Laura, would you be willing to allow me to start my video?
Oh, yes.
Thanks. I'll just try to share my screen while you do that.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks.
Sorry about that.
There we go.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. All right. Can you see my screen?
I can see yep. Your
Awesome.
presentation looks perfect.
Great. Okay,
Thank you.
cool. Well, my name is Andrea, and I'm a staff attorney with the Water Trust. Thanks for having me here today. So today I'll give you all some background on the Water Trust and then also some information on our request for water process. And then I'll give some examples of how some of our projects work in practice and also how we analyze water rights to see if there's a project to be had. So I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the Water Trust, but just to be safe, I'll just tell you about who we are. So we're a nonprofit organization and we work statewide to restore flows to Colorado's rivers. We were formed in 2001 by a group of water attorneys and water engineers who wanted to partner with Colorado's Instream Flow program to amplify its work. And today we still work closely with the CWCB to amplify the in-stream flow program. And we also do other types of water rights transactions, all to benefit the environment. And it's important to note that all of the transactions we do are voluntary, and they're all partnerships. And the purpose of the transactions are to benefit stream flow. And each transaction is a little bit different and unique because each water right and each stream system we're working in is, of course, unique. And we work within Colorado's prior appropriation system, and we can also compensate water rights owners at fair market value for using water rights in a project with us. So as of 2025, we've completed 27 projects, and you can see those on the map on this slide, marked by the balloons in purple, green, blue, and yellow. And these projects all together have added over 98,000 acre-feet of water to over 800 miles of stream in Colorado. So something to note is that we do not target specific streams or specific water rights owners for projects. All of our work is voluntary, and we let partners come to us if they think that there's a project to be had. So a big part of what we do is perform outreach to get our name out there and to share that we exist. And this is why we have our request for water process. So it's an outreach process. And then under this process, water rights owners are invited to submit a preliminary form on our website. And this form is basically an offer for us to evaluate their water rights to see if there are potential stream flow restoration opportunities that we could do. And by submitting this form, it does not commit water rights owners to a project with us in any way. And the evaluation of the water rights is free and then also confidential. And we prefer to work with water rights that are decreed for over 0.5 CFS or storage water rights that are decreed for over 20 acre feet. And we also prefer water rights to have a good history and record of use. And also, we need to ensure that the water rights owner would be willing to adjust operations of the water right to be able to benefit the environment. And then we do not work with water rights that are conditional, or we don't work with groundwater rights, springs, or water rights that are on the abandonment list. So here's a timeline of our request for water process. Usually we start outreach at the beginning of the year, and that includes this presentation. And then throughout the year, we accept any preliminary offers of water. And then also we're always around to answer any questions. And once an offer is submitted to us, it usually takes us about 2 to 3 months to review the offer. But, that depends on our staff capacity. And we are a small team of 9, and we're made up of technical staff and water rights attorneys. So on our website, you can find more information. You're also welcome to reach out to me, and my contact information is at the end of this presentation. So then once we get a preliminary offer from through our website, we go through a process to analyze the water rights. And that is in 3 steps. So the first step is we look at the stream's hydrology to determine if it is in need at a specific time and in a specific place. And so you could see this chart on the slide shows that this stream in question flows drop below target flows in June and July. And that's kind of shown by that picture, the first picture upper on the upper part of the slide. And then in the latter half of August, flows start to rebound and it can recover. And so this could show us that adding water to the stream could boost flows. And then the next step for us in our evaluation process is to look at the water rights that were offered to us. So we'll do a legal review of the water rights to look at the decrees. And then we also look at historic use of the water right. And the purpose of this is to determine if we can help restore flow when and where it's needed, which we determined in step one. And so, for example, on this slide, you could see in the picture that there are two diversion structures on this stretch of a river. And the diversions cause the stream flow to really drop below target flows. So this could tell us that if we adjust operation of the water rights, this could, in fact, improve stream flow. And then our final step is to figure out the best legal mechanism available to do a project to restore stream flow. And you've kind of heard throughout from Lisa that there are different, especially through CWCB, different options for how this can be done. And we categorize these mechanisms as permanent options, flexible options, or temporary options. And I'll give you a couple of examples. So permanent acquisitions, Lisa really helpfully explained how these work. So just really briefly, these involve going to water court to change a water right to add in-stream flow use. So this is in partnership with CWCB, and we help facilitate this kind of transaction. And the best part of this is that the water right maintains its priority date. And that just really helps to, be even more effective at restoring stream flow. And one of our projects that uses a permanent acquisition is our McKinley Ditch project on the Little Cimarron River. So in this project, water rights were donated to the Water Trust, and these water rights were originally decreed for agricultural use. And we worked with the ranch owner and the CWCB to change the water rights to add the use of in-stream flow. So we went to water court, and then we operate under a split season agreement. So early in the irrigation season, in the spring and early summer, the water rights owner can, or I'm sorry, the ranch owner can irrigate under using those water rights. And then later in the irrigation season, late summer, early fall, when the stream is in need, the CWCB can use those water rights for in-stream flow use. Okay, and then Lisa also mentioned the 5 and 10 temporary loan for in-stream flow use. So the best part about this is that it can be used to preserve or improve the natural environment and boost flows. And one of our projects that uses a 5 and 10 temporary loan is our Stagecoach Reservoir project. So this is used to boost flows on the Yampa River. And in 2022, we worked with Upper Yampa Water Conservancy District to create a loan of water rights to CWCB to boost flows. And so we've operated this twice in 2024 and 2025. And both of those years, we released 51 acre feet to the river. And as you can see from this chart on the slide, in the light blue, we've really, every time we've released and operated under the loan, it's really improved flows in the river. And then one last example of a legal mechanism to restore stream flow is a water conservation program. So these programs aren't necessarily used in partnership with the CWCB, but I figure it's helpful to mention them because they're a pretty low barrier to entry compared to a couple of these other tools that we've been talking about. So they just require administrative approval from either a water provider or a state agency, and the approving entity is defined in Colorado revised statutes. They can't be used in Division 7, though, but in practice, it could look like a diverter enrolling in the program and then turning off at a critical time to leave water in a stream. And then if there are no downstream diverters for a couple of miles, then the stream will be benefited and flows will be improved in those couple of miles. And then something really cool about water conservation programs is that they protect against abandonment of the water rights, and there's also protection for historic consumptive use. And one example of a project we have done with a water conservation program is Cold Mountain Ranch. So for this project, we partnered with the owner of Cold Mountain Ranch to apply for a water conservation program with the Colorado River District. And the owner of that ranch coordinated reducing their diversions to boost flows on the Crystal River. And then this happened in 2022 and 2024 and improved stream flows by adding over 200 acre feet to the Crystal River through doing this. And then something that was a huge added bonus for the ranch owner is that the Water Trust compensated them for doing this project. And so one last thing, so the Water Trust does compensate water rights owners for working with us. We compensate at fair market value if requested. And then some additional benefits for using water rights in a project with us would be protections against abandonment, safeguarding historic consumptive use, and then, of course, helping the local stream. So I will wrap up my presentation, but if you're interested in working with us at all, you're welcome to reach out to me or even fill out a request for water form on our website. And here's my contact info and also our programs director info if you have any questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Andrea.
You're welcome.
All right. If anyone has any questions, I'm going to leave the floor open. Please feel free to unmute yourself or reach out on chat if you're having trouble with that, and I can help. I'm currently seeing no particular questions. Well, we'll be giving people a little bit of time to consider any questions. I want to thank all of our presenters today for coming in and talking about new appropriations and acquisitions and the Instream Flow program moving forward. And thank you all for joining us.
Laura, it looks like
Yes.
somebody has a question.
Yes. Mendy?
Hi, Laura. I was just wondering, so anyone can lease their water right, their private water right through either CWCB or through the Colorado Water Trust through CWCB. Is that correct?
I believe that Andrea can probably answer this question better, or Lisa. Andrea, would you like to take this?
I'm happy to take it. Yeah, the Water Trust, we work closely with CWCB, but we're a nonprofit. So we work to facilitate transactions and help assist along the way. So the loan is to CWCB, but we could be like a project partner and provide support, which would mean like, working with CWCB, drafting the legal documents necessary. And then, as mentioned, we do the in-house review of the water rights and that kind of thing. So I hope that helps.
That does help. And then just
Okay.
also for like compensation, you, the water right owner can get compensation either through CWCB or through facilitations through the water trust.
I believe that is correct. It can kind of depend on the project, but I don't know if Laura or Lisa has a little bit more insight for CWCB side.
I think that is correct. Lisa, do you have anything to add?
Yes, I'm just trying to get my audio on. Yeah, we have funds. It depends on how the in-stream flow is being used. It depends on which fund we would ask the board to approve for it. And then we also work, like Andrea said, with the Colorado Water Trust. They get donations to help pay for some of them as well.
Okay. And so if they, and this goes for both the in-stream water right and also the reservoir um, loans, does that water right have to be on a particular stretch of river that already has an in-stream flow water right? Or it could
It
be either or?
It used to be that way, that it had to have an in-stream flow, an existing one on that stream reach, but we just in September of 2025 added to the rules to go along with the statute. So now a reservoir release can be made to a reach of a stream without an existing in-stream flow. So that is allowed now.
So it can be for either or. So if it has an in-stream flow or if it doesn't have an in-stream flow, either one it can be leased to.
Yes, if once it goes through the whole approval process and, made sure that it's not injuring any other decreed water right.
Okay, awesome. All right, thank you so much.
Sure,
Lisa, can I keep you on for a second? There is
sure.
a question on the chat. Where does the money come from for the acquisition of water? I think
Those are the funds that, and maybe Rob can jump in here, but we have funds in our budget with the CWCB that pays for the acquisition if someone is wanting to be compensated for it. Sometimes people just want to donate, but if they do want to be compensated, we have what we call the construction fund or the species conservation fund. And I don't know, Rob, if you want to add anything else to that.
No, I think that's right, Lisa. And I guess I would just add that the construction fund is derived from um, uh, interest from low interest loans. So that's how the fund is generated.
Thank you, Lisa and Rob. Does anyone else have any questions that they would like to ask? All right. If you do have any questions that come up, you can contact us. You can contact Rob Veal at rob.veal@state.co.us, or you can go to our website here on our listed here at the bottom of the page. Thank you all for joining us today and for all of your input. Thank you.